Good morning, and thank you all for joining us here today. With me this morning is successful businessman Rick Rovegno, also my running mate. Rick is a former county commissioner, and we've teamed in the race for county commissioner in the November 3rd election. And also joining us today is Dave Miller. Dave has given this county more than 35 years of dedicated and loyal service. He recently retired as the Deputy Director of our county's Office of Aging and Community Services. We're here today because this is the people's government. And we believe the upcoming election is all about the future of the people's government here in Cumberland County. And also because we believe that the public has a right to know about the workings of their government. As many of you already know, on a very important issue, I parted company with my majority commissioner colleagues June 22nd and voted against what I considered a premature and flawed employee compensation plan. That instead of promoting fairness and equity in our county's compensation system, or as was the intent of benchmarking salaries to what the market actually demanded, granted astronomical pay increases to some, and clearly at the expense of others, and also at the expense of our taxpayers, and well above what it certainly appears the market actually demanded. For our taxpayers, I have raised concern and continue to have very serious concerns about the costs of this pay grab benefiting a minority of our county's workforce, and at a time when we had just erased and spent a lot of time and effort in eliminating the $9.8 million structural budget deficit that I inherited when I walked in the door as Cumberland County's newest commissioner 3 years and 10 months ago. And for our taxpayers and our constituents as well, I'm concerned not just about the long-term additional cost to them in the form of their tax bills as a result of the action taken June 22nd, but also what important services may end up being reduced or on the chopping block as a result. And for all of our county's employees, many, the vast majority, hardworking, dedicated professionals. I don't begrudge anybody getting a pay raise when it's just and fair. But I am also concerned about what impact a large and questionable pay raise like the one that occurred this year for a relative few could have on all of our employees with respect to pay and benefits, their pay and benefits in the future. Because the last time I checked, we don't have a money printing press located in the old courthouse basement or in the basement of the old prison or anywhere else for that matter. So here's what we know, and here's what the public deserves to know. And I've given you all a lot of background information. What started out with a PowerPoint presentation to the Board of Commissioners June 4th as a plan that would ostensibly bring the pay of 283 job positions in line with what the market supposedly demands at an annual cost, we were told at the time, to the general fund of $603,400, morphed by the time the new pay hikes were implemented July 12 to raise the salaries of 323 employees, roughly a quarter of our county's total workforce, by a total of nearly $2.3 million, with an added cost to the general fund of at least $1 million annually. Interestingly, coincidence or not, the latest financial data, as provided by our county finance department just last week, and as we prepare to deliberate a new county budget for 2016, shows the county facing a new general fund structural budget deficit of just over $1 million in 2016. But I say at least an additional $1 million cost to the general fund because it's not at all clear what kind of analysis was done, if any, regarding the impact of the $2.3 million pay boost on other pension and benefit costs. I'm told that you can factor in an additional 17% to pay for the benefit costs associated with the pay increase. So whether it's coming from the property tax supported general fund, or whether it's coming from federal dollars, or whether it's coming from the state, the fact of the matter is that we could be looking at an additional annual cost to the taxpayers of $2.7 million. Of the 323 employees who received raises July 12, the average increase amounted to over $7,000. A total of 107 employees received pay raises of over $10,000. 36 got pay bumps of over $15,000. And a fortunate 4 received pay raises of over $20,000, including our county's chief clerk, whose pay was increased by nearly $25,000, from $107,000 to $132,000 a year. And the best I can tell from a recent salary study completed by the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, Cumberland County's chief clerk, at the new minimum established for the position in our county under this new pay scheme, is now among the highest paid non-elected county administrators in Pennsylvania, save Chester and Montgomery counties, which are roughly 2 and 4 times the size of Cumberland County and are located in the more costly Philadelphia market. So I ask, who in either the private or public sector gets pay raise of $10, $15, $20, or $25,000 unless it's associated with new responsibilities or new position? It's just unheard of. So, and that wasn't the case with respect to these raises. On the question of whether these new higher minimum salaries were really necessary to meet the demands of the market, a cursory comparison of a sampling of positions with like positions in our neighboring counties of Dauphin and York County, both larger counties in population compared to Cumberland, suggests that Cumberland County's new minimums are well above what the market actually demands. Today, Hertzler-Rovegno and I pledge that if we're elected on November the 3rd, we will undertake a complete review and reevaluation of the compensation system that went into effect July 12, and where appropriate, necessary, and possible, make corrections to restore fairness and equity for all of our employees and fiscal responsibility and accountability to our taxpayers. Now, along those lines, I've also this morning delivered a letter to the desks of my commissioner colleagues requesting a moratorium on any further changes to our county's compensation system in light of the fact that there is an election in less than a month, and that there will be a new board of commissioners sworn into office in January. And the current board, in my view, should not engage in any action that could impede the new board's ability to both review and reevaluate past compensation decisions in conjunction with whatever compensation policy the incoming board determines to be both fair and appropriate in the future. What we already know is that there will be at least 1 new commissioner and perhaps 2 new commissioners elected November 3rd. Now, before I turn the podium over to Rick and we address any questions that you might have. Excuse me?
Is Dave?
All right. Yeah, I'd like to ask Dave Miller, who took the time to be here with us this morning, again, to give us his perspective on the impact of the pay hikes within our county's Office of Aging. Dave, as I mentioned, served 35 years in this county and retired recently as the Deputy Director of the Office of Aging. So, Dave?
Thank you.
Okay.
I would like to, good morning, by the way. I would like to state for the record that I am here as a private citizen. My only current affiliation with Cumberland County's government is as a taxpayer and retiree. My comments this morning are mine and mine alone. I do not speak for or on behalf of my previous agency. They have not provided me with any input or information relative to my comments this morning, nor have I informed them that I was going to be here. I would also like to make it clear that when I talk about positions this morning that I am talking about job classifications and not the individuals that fill them. Nothing I say this morning should be interpreted as relating to the character or integrity, dedication, or commitment of any county employee. With that said, I very willingly have joined with the Commissioner Hertzler and Commissioner Rovegno here this morning because, as you've heard many times so far, there are issues, in my opinion, with the current classification and compensation system. One of the purposes of the Gallagher study was to benchmark county salaries to compensation levels in similar organizations that be public sector or nonprofit. And I am certain, beyond any doubt, that some of the salaries in this recently enacted system are clearly above fair market value. Not just in central Pennsylvania, which is our labor market, by the way. I understand that there were studies done and surveys taken of some metropolitan areas and then supposedly adjusted for this labor market. But people do not come here from Detroit to work as a care manager too in a human service agency. Our labor market is central Pennsylvania. The new minimum salaries established for what is currently called a senior human services case manager are clearly above the market rate, as I said, not just in central Pennsylvania, but actually across the entire state. These positions can easily be benchmarked against other human service agencies in surrounding counties and throughout Pennsylvania because they are civil service positions. The job descriptions with minimum education and training requirements are uniform across the state. As an example, Cumberland County's previous minimum starting salary for what was then called an aging care manager 2 was $18.78 an hour. That was the highest in central Pennsylvania and one of the highest in the Commonwealth. It was actually $2 an hour higher than York and Dauphin counties and over $3 higher than Franklin and Perry counties. The new starting salary for these positions, as enacted, is now $25.40 an hour. That is an increase of $6.62 an hour, with no change in job responsibilities. Cumberland County is now paying $8.62 an hour more than any other county in central Pennsylvania that pays for this exact same job classification. That is outrageous, and that is wrong. I'd like to finish with just 2 more points. First, the effect of this on employee morale, not just in my former agency, but throughout the county. Under the old step system, it took an employee who was hired at step 1 approximately 10 years to reach the pay level that they are now currently giving to new hires. It's created a situation where dedicated, high-performing employees who have been working for the county for 10 years are now training new hires who are earning exactly the same pay and are still in the probationary status. And finally, this change added over $190,000 in salary expense to the Aging and Community Services budget. When you factor in, and I understand it's a 17%, the figure that you were given, when you factor in the 17% increase in benefit costs, that adds up to just shy of $250,000 in increased expenses without adding one penny to the revenue side of the budget for that agency. I've heard it said many times over the past year that this classification and compensation system is going to be the foundation for the pay for performance scheme that is being implemented, that it has to be right, fair, and defensible. It is not right, it is not fair, and it is not defensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. Rick?
I think I'll just be a little simpler because I don't know how much more I can add to that eloquent statement by Dave. I've been a self-employed businessman for 40 years. I value my staff. I'm nothing without my staff. I value my employees. When I was a commissioner, I valued Cumberland County's employees. They know that. They always saw me out there on the line with them. I want them to know that their talent, that their energies are appreciated. They are exceptional. But in my private sector business, and we have been very successful, not one of my private sector employees has ever received a pay increase like has been granted to some here. I do believe it's caused significant problems with morale, and actually in the question that I answered for Penn Live, what would I do and if elected in my first year, I'd say reestablish employee morale because it has never been worse in Cumberland County. So Jim has done an exceptional job of doing due diligence and has pointed out so many inconsistencies that I wholeheartedly join him in pledging, if elected, we will take a hard look at this and reevaluate everything. So thank you very much. I guess we're available for questions if anyone has them.
Yeah, before we open it to questions, I just want to, if you'll allow me, just kind of follow up on something that David said. We're dealing with, as a result of this pay raise, what's called wage compression. And, essentially, that is what has caused a significant decay, now in employee morale here in Cumberland County. In an article published by a consulting group, Simpson Consulting, the Siegel Group, it notes that organizations' employment and salary actions can create the unintended perception that pay is distributed unfairly, which can have undesirable consequences. Consider the not uncommon instance of a 10-year high-performing employee who decides to start looking for a new job after learning that a new colleague who has a great deal of potential and enthusiasm but little relevant experience and whom she has been asked to train has been hired at her pay level. The example illustrates one form of salary compression, when the pay of one or more employees, if very close to the pay of more experienced employees, is in the same job. And the article goes on to state that examples of salary compression can be demoralizing and lead to widespread dissatisfaction. Employers should be concerned because salary compression transforms the organization's single largest cost, i.e. compensation, from a motivator to a demotivator. I also want to say, and Dave, I know was going to touch on it, and he didn't, but I know one of the overriding concerns that Dave also has as we've talked about this is you know, when we talk about the additional cost just in the Office of Aging, how are we going to, you know, improve services when they're needed? And we have, as we all know, one of the fastest growing segments of our population is over the age of 85. So these expenses all going into salaries takes away from our ability to adequately provide for these services. And I think that that's an important point that needs to be made. So with that, open it up to any questions you might have, and invite Rick and Dave if they would like to chime in on any responses as well. So.
Well, Dave described the raises as outrageous and wrong. How would you describe them?
I think they were unjustified. Look, you know, it's important that we pay our employees fairly, and you know, we also have to be accountable to our taxpayers. You know, we just went through a situation, as I said, where we, over the past 3 years and 10 months, you know, we corrected, we turned the curve here in terms of we were able to balance our budget. You know, we have a structurally balanced budget for 2013, 14, and 15. Well, this mid-year pay raise that occurred July 12, what's the projection show for 2016? We got a $1.3 million structural budget deficit. So, you know, I want to be fair to all of our employees, not just some of our employees. And the issue with respect to whether or not this is what the market demands is something that I've never gotten a clear response to, and I've repeatedly asked for questions. What positions were compared to what positions in, you know, what market or markets? And we have not received, you know, any response on that. The only thing we've been told, and I'll let you see whether you can make sense out of this, is that the salary benchmarking involved the utilization of published data surveys, and that 19 surveys from 4 sources were used. Benchmarked positions needed at least 5 source matches surveys and at least 70% content match. At the end of the day, we were told 44% of the positions were benchmarked and at least 30% were required to be valid. What does that mean? Why didn't somebody just pick up the phone and see what some of the other positions are paying in our surrounding counties so we could determine exactly whether or not we're paying what the market demands?
I again want to stress this. This was not a failure of our employees. This was a failure of leadership. And I'm going to be very specific. Gary Eichelberger wants to bring private sector practices to Cumberland County. He has no private sector practical managerial experience. If he would have known that this is going to be a mess, which it is, and it's going to take a significant amount of time and effort to clean it up.
If elected, would you guys reverse it? Is that even a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, let me just say that it's always difficult to taketh what already has been giveth. On the other hand, we're going to do the review and evaluation that should have been done in the first place. And at this point, you know, at least as far as my position is concerned, and of course I'm still only going to be one of 3 commissioners, but hopefully with Commissioner Rovegno's support, you know, all options are on the table as far as I'm concerned. You know, we want to be fair to all of our employees. We want to make sure that the services in this county are delivered and delivered efficiently. And then we want to also look out for our taxpayers. We're very fortunate to have the lowest county taxes of any county in the region, and I think Rick and I would like to keep it that way. But you know what? Services aren't for free either. So, you know, we're looking, you know, to restore fiscal accountability and fiscal responsibility if given the opportunity of new terms on November 3rd. Did you want to add anything?
To answer your question, it is very difficult to walk a dog backwards. That being said, if in fact that analysis shows that we have erred, then we need to figure out a way, perhaps, how to walk the dog backwards. While still being fair to those employees who had nothing to do with what I believe errors that were made.